Jeff, Jim, and Carmela, part number 3. As soon as Jeff saw Beth Stanfield, the flight attendant on the Southern Airlines to Newark, he had a suspicion the operations people at headquarters had booked him on this flight because of the connection Beth would have with her best friend Gail Borland. Gail was a wizard in mathematics and considered to be a human calculator. Gail would be a prize worth having, and she was high on the list of persons to watch and try to recruit. Several attempts without success were made to recruit her. MI7 was calculating that Jeff would get a chance to approach Gail and once again offer her a position. When Beth came by delivering bottled water, Jeff asked her if she was Beth Stanfield from Bluefield, West Virginia. Beth looked at Jeff, trying to place him because she did not want to admit that he was a stranger. Jeff knew he had thrown her a curve with that question, which gave him the opportunity to strike up a conversation. Jeff could see Beth was racking her brain, trying to come up with the ability to remember this stranger. Jim smiled and said, "I am from Bluefield and went to school with your brother Bill. I believe you must have been in grammar school then." Beth handed Jeff the water, relieved that she did not need to explain to Jeff she did not have a clue of who he was. She smiled and said, "My brother lives in Manhattan and works in the New York Stock Exchange. I always stay with him when I have a layover. I will tell him I met you on the flight to Newark." Jeff placed the bottled water on the seat tray and told Beth he was staying at a hotel just a few blocks from Times Square. He also told her he was on his way to Istanbul and was booked tomorrow on a Pan American flight. Beth started to walk away to deliver some water to another passenger. She paused and came back to Jeff's seat and told him that she and Bill were going to Radio City Music Hall tonight, and you're welcome to join us. The Rockettes are performing their Christmas special, and one of my best friends performs with the group. Jeff had witnessed so many orchestrated happenings planned by MI7, he sometimes, even with his extraordinary abilities, could not believe how orchestrated things could be. MI7 was a master at orchestrating, and this event was no exception. Jeff had never watched the Rockettes perform, and this would be more enjoyable than sitting in a hotel room waiting for morning to come. Jeff also knew he needed to approach Gail about employment, so he was quick to accept the offer of going to Radio City Music Hall and seeing Beth's brother Bill after all these years. It was a short walk for Jeff from the hotel to the Radio City Music Hall. Beth and her brother were waiting on him at the front entrance. The first thing Bill wanted to know was what Jeff had been doing after graduating from high school. Jeff's MI7 cover story was world recordings, so he told Bill he was traveling all over the world looking for international talent. That was the reason he was booked on Pan American to Istanbul. The conversation between the three was small talk while they waited for the Rockettes to perform. The performance always preceded the movie. The Rockettes' Christmas show was a spectacular event and extremely enjoyable. When the Rockettes came on stage, Jeff immediately recognized Gail Borland from the images he had cataloged in his brain. He had it all memorized. Gail had been identified by MI7 as a human calculator when she was a freshman at the University of Tennessee. The problem in recruiting Gail was her love of dance and performing. She was determined to dance with the Rockettes, and she was accepted the first time she auditioned. Gail was high on the list of people who were watched to make sure no other foreign country recruited them. Clandestine efforts were implemented to keep Gail from being recruited by another intelligent agency. Gail Borland graduated with honors from the University of Tennessee in 1962. She had her heart set on becoming a Rockette and refused all offers from MI7. Jeff would try to convince Gail to reconsider the offer from the agency. With his walking storehouse of knowledge, he would know exactly what to say to Gail. MI7 had hired Jeff because of the abilities he possessed to say or do the things that were required. No one could match or understand how Jeff was able to recall everything he saw or read. All this wizardry was the reason he knew most everything about Beth's best friend, Gail. He knew she had a strong sense of patriotism, and Jeff would use this to try and get Gail to reconsider the offer because the country needed her talents. After the performance, Beth, Gail, Bill, and Jeff went to one of the finer restaurants near the Radio City Music Hall. The conversation was mostly small talk, and Bill and Jeff did most of the talking about school days in Bluefield, West Virginia. When Jeff found a chance, he told Gail he needed to speak with her about something important. It was getting late, and Beth had a flight leaving for Knoxville at 3 a.m. Bill had to work the next day, and Gail did 3 shows and was exhausted. Jeff said he would walk with Gail to the bus station, where she would catch a bus to Queens. Beth and Bill said their goodbyes and departed in a taxi. Jeff and Gail began to walk down the cold December streets of New York City toward the bus station. Jeff, as they walked, told Gail he had something important he needed to discuss with her. Gail had a puzzled look on her face when Jeff said he needed to tell her why he was at Radio City Music Hall this evening. Jeff told Gail MI7 was holding the offer of a job if she wanted it. Gail at this point did not know Jeff was working for MI7. She looked at Jeff with a "I don't believe this" look on her face. She touched Jeff's arm and said, "You are the person most of the people in my science class talked about when I was attending the University of Tennessee. I had seen a photograph of you, but I would never have made the connection. If you are the guy with a super memory, I feel honored that a true wizard like you would approach me about joining MI7. Most believed you were not real, but a made-up character. The people that heard about you said you knew something about everything." Jeff acknowledged to Gail he was probably the person they were talking about, but he considered her the gifted person. Jeff took Gail's hand and told her he considered her to be the wizard. "I have a gifted memory and only retain things I hear, see, and read, but nothing else. You have the gift of mathematics, and I think your gift is more spectacular than mine. Your country needs you because some bad people are arrayed against our country. We need all the smart people we can recruit to keep our enemies in check." The public address announcer announced the boarding of the bus Gail was to take to Queens. As Gail walked out of the terminal to board the bus, she told Jeff she was reconsidering the offer MI7 had made. Gail thanked Jeff and told him she would be in contact with his headquarters. "Tell them I will be in contact before the week is up." Gail smiled at Jeff, shook his hand, and then she walked onto the bus. To the average person, the way Jeff was connected to Gail by a chance meeting with Beth would appear beyond chance. The ability to know all possibilities when planning anything is the secret. Jeff's special gift, coupled with the highly skilled organization he worked for, could produce a coincidence more spectacular than this.